I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode 200, Celebrating Your Wins. Hello, my lady. If you have a spouse that is struggling with a pornography problem, then you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn, and I am a life coach, a member of the LDS faith, and the wife of a former porn addict. And in this podcast, I am going to teach you how to change the way that you are affected by your husband's choices. We can't change him, but what we can do is change the way that you respond when he makes the decisions that he does. I'm going to teach you how to manage your brain, how to process all of the emotions that seem so overwhelming to you so that you can finally live a life where you aren't living in fear of triggers and relapses. And by learning how to manage your mind and process your emotions, you are no longer going to be running on an emotional roller coaster, but you are going to start feeling so much more in control of your life no matter what your husband is doing. And I'm going to teach you all of that on this podcast. I can't wait to get started with you, and I'm so glad that you are here. I promise you, you're in the right place. Hello, my ladies. Happy Monday and happy 200th episode of this podcast. I cannot believe it. If you guys have listened to all of the podcast episodes, I want to give you a medal. That is a lot of hours of listening to me. And I know that there are so many of you who have listened to all of the episodes. And I know many of you are new or just found me, and that's totally fine. There are so many. You can always go back and listen to them later. Pick and choose whichever ones sound interesting to you. But I also know there are so many of you that started at the beginning and have just been with me for years, or even if you just found me, so many of you want to go start at the beginning. And I know that that's super tempting. And some of you just skip around. But holy cow, 200 episodes. I have been doing this podcast now for almost 4 years. There's actually over 200 episodes if you count all the bonus episodes. But this is the 200th regular weekly podcast episode. And I am so grateful for each and every one of you. I wanted to make this episode a little bit different, and I'm going to dive into it in just a minute. But one of the things that I wanted to do, which I thought just would be fun and interesting for you guys, is to tell you a little bit about the podcast, to tell you a little bit about how many listeners we have and which episodes are the favorite, and give you just a little bit of a taste of what I see from behind the scenes. Because I know listening to a podcast, you're the only one listening to it. And you're not really talking to your girlfriends about how you're listening to this podcast because of what it's called. But I want you to know that you are not alone. And that is going to be one of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. All right. So let's dive in and let's celebrate. Okay. So I want to share a few of my podcast statistics so that you guys can get a sense of how many of you guys there are out there. So this is something that's super fun. There are almost 250,000 downloads of this podcast overall. Almost 250. There are insane amounts of you guys listening. There have been 18,000 downloads of this podcast just this year. That's 2024, and it's only March 18th, okay? Normally, we have between 300 and 500 women listening every single week. Obviously, the juicier titles get more podcast downloads, okay? So when I'm talking about intimacy and things like that, those are the ones that people want to click on. But typically week by week, we have about between 300 and 500 women listening every single week. You guys, if you feel like you are the only one listening to this podcast, if you feel like you are the only one that is going through something like this, you're completely incorrect. And then what's the coolest thing about this, what's super fun, is the juiciest podcast episodes, right? Those ones have even more downloads. And it's fun to go, and I get to look at all of this, right? Is I can see that there are almost 6,000 downloads of just one episode. And ladies, I'm sharing this with you because I want to celebrate each one of you who is listening right now. You guys are making this possible. You are not alone. Your brain wants you to think that you're alone. Your brain wants you to think that you're the only one going through this, that this is something that no one else has done and nobody knows how to do it, and you're the only one struggling, and you are not. There are almost 250,000 downloads of this podcast. You are not by yourself, okay? Now, reason. I just wanted to share that just because I thought it would be fun to share with you. And I know that you listen every week and you feel like you're by yourself and it's just me talking in your ear, but there are hundreds of you doing this every single week. That is fantastic. And in case you're wondering, that puts us in the top 10% of podcasts. Did you know this? That is a fun statistic. If you have it's like if you have a certain number of people that listen every single week, a certain number of downloads within the first 7 days and the first 30 days, then you're in a top certain percent. We're in the top 10% of podcasts. That's how amazingly popular this podcast is, for better or worse. Obviously, none of us are grateful that we're in this situation, but it is important to recognize that you're not alone. And that's kind of the theme that I wanted to do today on this podcast, is teach you guys that it's important to celebrate your wins. And today we're going to celebrate your wins specifically, but real quick for just a minute, I want to dive into this idea. And this is something I talk to my clients about a lot. As the wife of a porn addict, your brain is going to focus on the negative a lot. You're going to see the negative thoughts. You're going to feel a lot of negative emotion. When I'm working with my clients, we process a lot of negative emotion. And one of the things that I always tell them is that it's just as important to process the positive. If you read the book, The Gap and the Gain, or any self-help book, there's often the concept in there that your brain automatically focuses on the negative, on what is going wrong. And if you only ever do that, then you're only ever going to see how far you have to go, right? If you're trying to lose weight and you only ever focus on how you haven't hit your goal weight yet, it's always going to seem out of reach, and you're probably going to stop before you ever get there because you're going to get disheartened and you're not going to want to do it anymore, right? You're going to lose your motivation to keep going because all you're telling yourself is how far you still have to go. And it's very important, ladies, that you celebrate your wins. In my coaching program, my clients have the ability to message me. We have a private communication app. It's called Slack, which enables them to message me at any time, and I can make announcements and post the call schedules. And in there, I have an area, a little channel where it's called Wins. And this is where everybody gets to post all of the things they're celebrating, all of the ways that they are making progress. And I am encouraging them to do this more and more and more because it's so crucial for you to start seeing the progress you're making, even if it seems small. So that's why I wanted to do this podcast episode specifically, because I want you guys to not just see how far you have to go. And I know that every week when you listen, it can seem like, oh my gosh, I still have to work on this. I haven't nailed this down yet. I'm still struggling with this. And what I really want to encourage you guys to do is to start tracking your wins. Start tracking the thoughts that you didn't realize were thoughts that you start noticing. Start tracking the moments where you hesitate before you react. All of these are wins. Start noticing how far you've come. If you take one of the best exercises that you guys can do, and I would encourage you to do this today, is to look at where you were a year ago. Take your mind and ask yourself, okay, where was I a year ago? And to reflect on that, and that gives you perspective, not just to see how far you still have to go, but to notice how far you've come. And it's super powerful for your brain to see that, so that you can acknowledge not just how far you have to go, but also all of the wins, and they stack up. If you guys read Atomic Habits, I'm reading Atomic Habits right now. It's so good, but he talks about the little consistent daily actions that seem like they're not important are the things that actually make the biggest difference. And that's what I want you guys to see today. And I'm super excited to share with you guys some of your wins. So I put this in my email list. I sent this out and I posted it on Instagram, and I got so many amazing responses. I created this short little survey for you guys to share the things that have been the biggest aha moments, the biggest transformations, the ways that the podcast has helped you. And I wanted to do that so that you could take a moment, reflect, and start celebrating your wins. And I want to share some of those responses today. So here are some of your answers, okay? One of the questions that I asked was, I said, how has the podcast helped you? And there were several main themes that I saw from the responses that I got. And the number one theme was, I've learned that my husband's pornography problem isn't about me. I'm going to read some of these comments, but I love that this was the theme because this is one of the biggest lies that our brain believes. And this is what I harp on so much. So I'm glad it's getting through, right? So here was one response. It's helped me realize, the podcast just helped me realize that my husband's pornography problem isn't about me at all. and that how I feel about myself comes from my thoughts that I choose to think, not what my husband does or doesn't do. I love this, and I'm so proud of you for realizing this and internalizing it and starting to make a change. And this was, again, one of the biggest themes, was realizing my husband's pornography problem isn't about me. Again, I could read through every single one of these comments, but here was another one. It was tough, but that I'm not the problem. This podcast has taught me that I'm not the problem and that I'm beautiful. I'm not the reason he's turned to porn. He had this way before we got together. And I think that this is fascinating too, because there are so many people, so many of you who your husband has been struggling with pornography since before you were even around, and yet still our brains want to believe it has something to do with us. And we've gone over this a million times, but one of the biggest reasons is because we think if we're part of the problem, then we can be part of the solution. Maybe there's something that we can do. And this is so tempting to want to do because we want that false sense of control. We want to be able to do something because it's much harder to sit with the idea that we can't. I did a clip on this. Talked about this in a coaching call the other day, and I clipped it and I put it on YouTube. You can go search for my channel on YouTube and you can see that coaching clip that I did on this. But what I was talking about was how our brain likes the idea of working. We like to do things that feel in control. And our brain doesn't like feeling out of control. So it would much rather have anxiety, because anxiety feels like you're doing something. It feels important. It feels like you're working. So if I have anxiety about what my husband's doing, then I will take action trying to change his behavior. I will try to manipulate his behavior. And I did this for years, right? Especially with intimacy or whatever it is that you think is going to change his behavior. But learning how to let that go is what enables you to let go of all of that hustle, all of that exhaustion. Because when you're trying to control something you don't have control over, that's when we burn ourselves out. And so really understanding that this isn't about you is what is going to enable you to take a step back, get your hands off it. And then once you learn how to process your emotions, which if you don't know how to do, then you come work with me, I'll help you. If you learn how to process your emotions, that's the game changer, because that's when you're able to actually do it from a place of not just forcing yourself through willpower to not take action, but to sit and process all of the emotions that come up from it. It's so good. Another theme that I saw was that the podcast has helped you work on yourself, right? So the first theme that I saw in all of these responses was recognizing that it's your husband's pornography problem is not about you. And then the second thing is that to work on yourself and to do the self-improvement, and how many of you talked about how it's increased your self-esteem is amazing. And I'm so proud of you, because this is crazy hard work. And I want to take a moment to celebrate this for you, because how many women struggle with self-esteem? I mean, I would say 99.9%. I know literally of one woman in my life who I can think of right now who doesn't struggle with self-esteem. And she is, I've even talked to her about this. And I was like, how are you doing this? And she's like, I don't know. I've just always been this way. Crazy. And literally, I just know one woman. Every other woman I've ever met in my life has struggled in some way with self-esteem. And so to have this be a common thread, a common theme, is incredible. You are changing yourself. And I love this because I want to offer, ladies, that the most important work that you can do is to change yourself for those around you, to improve yourself for those around you, and especially for your own children. Think about your daughters, right? Think about the things that you think about yourself. Are those things that you would want your daughter to think about herself, or your son if you don't have any daughters? But women particularly tend to struggle with self-esteem in different ways than men, but we tend to struggle with self-esteem. And I'm so honored and so happy that the things that you are learning here are helping you to conquer those negative thoughts, to realize that they're just thoughts, to recognize that they're not true, and to start reframing that and retraining your brain not to think it. Because if you start showing up with more self-confidence, with a higher dose of self-esteem, then you are going to interact in the world in a different way, and it's noticeable and it's tangible, and your kids see it. And that is something that they then can even see that is possible, and then they can emulate it. And it's so powerful. Another one of the themes that I saw in these responses, I said, what is your biggest aha moment or transformation that you've had since listening to the podcast? And there were tons of, this isn't about me. It's not my fault. I'm not the reason why he's doing it. I've recognized that this isn't about me. But one of the biggest ones that I saw as well was, my biggest aha is knowing that I'm going to be okay, even if the problem is never solved. And even if at times I feel like I'm back at square one. This comment to me was like, oh, all 4 years of this podcast have been worth it. And I want to dive into it just a little bit. My biggest aha is knowing that I'm going to be okay even if the problem is never solved. When I tell people what I do, when I talk to people about what it is that I do for a living, when I try to put on my website, if you look at everything that I ever post, everything is all about how you can move forward even if your husband doesn't change. That is the most powerful thing that I can shift and help you learn for you to shift in your brain. Because when we stay attached to his behavior, when we think that how we feel is at the mercy of his actions, when we think that how our lives have to continue is something that can't change or is up to him, that's when we feel stuck. And the biggest message that I want to give you, ladies, is that you're not stuck, even if sometimes you feel that way, right? Your feelings are real, but they're not true. So even if you feel stuck, it doesn't mean that you are stuck. And that was one thing that I loved about this comment, is she said, even if at times I feel like I'm back at square one. And yes, ladies, sometimes it's going to feel that way. Sometimes you are going to have days where you're like, I thought I was over this. I thought I had conquered this thought. I thought I had gotten past this emotion. I thought I had processed this memory from the past. And it's going to come up again and you're going to say, man, I feel like I'm back at square one. And this is why it's so important to celebrate your wins. This is why it's so important to give yourself that perspective and say, okay, maybe it feels like I'm back at square one, but let me take a look at where I was a year ago. Where was I before I found the podcast? Where was I before I started doing self-improvement and working on myself? Where was I 12 months ago? And when you give yourself that opportunity to take a look, you will see how much farther you've come. Even just in recognizing that you feel like you're back at square one and that it's just a feeling and it doesn't mean that you are back at square one is a huge thing to celebrate. Now, for those of you who think, oh my gosh, I'm taking a look and I feel like I'm at exactly the same place where I was a year ago, all that means, ladies, is that you just need a little bit of help. And I want to offer, if you are taking a look at yourself right now and saying, man, I am not making the progress that I want. Or if you're taking a look and saying, yeah, I'm making a lot of progress, but I still have so far to go, then I want to encourage you to come join coaching with me, because this is where I will be able to help you through the roadblocks that you don't even realize are keeping you stuck. I was going to do a reel about this on Instagram, and I probably will, but I have this example for you of what this is like. Are you guys ready? So as you guys know, my husband and I, we moved into a new house a year ago, and we have a new master bathroom, right? And I've been using this master bathroom for 12 months, more than that now, 14 months. Okay. Now, the other day I was out of Q-tips. I ordered new Q-tips. They came and my husband put them away. Now, he doesn't do this normally. I'm the one that puts everything away, and I couldn't find them, and I knew he'd put them away, and I knew I'd ordered several packages, and the kids ran out of Q-tips, and I ran out of Q-tips, and I was like, where are these? I know I bought them. Where did they go? And then finally we asked him, and he's like, oh, I put them in the drawer in your bathroom on your vanity. And I was like, what drawer? Or I was like, no, I've looked in all the drawers. They're not in there. And then he came in there and he opened a drawer in my vanity that I have never seen, ladies. I've never seen. I swear it hasn't been there, but it has been there for the last 14 months. And he opened this drawer and I was like, Rob, I had no idea that this drawer was even there. Zero clue. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this is what coaching is like. We have so many thoughts in our brains. We have over 60,000 thoughts a day. We can't possibly be aware of all of them. And yet sometimes stuff gets locked in there and it starts creating a problem in our lives, right? The Q-tips get put in a drawer that we don't even know exists. And now we're out of Q-tips and we know we ordered some and it's creating a problem. And I get really frustrated with my husband for putting something away and I don't even know where any of it is and nobody has Q-tips and we all need to have them. And it was creating an actual problem. And it was something I didn't even know existed. And that's exactly what our thoughts are like. We have so many thoughts, and some of them are hiding things that are creating problems. And my job as a coach is to come help you become aware of the thoughts that you don't even realize are there, and then teach you the skills to know what to do with them next. Right? But my job is to come say, hey, well, why don't we open this drawer? And everyone is like, oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize that was even there. And that is what coaching is like. So if you aren't having the progress that you want, if you want to make even further progress, if you are ready to take this to the next level, or if you are frustrated with doing this on your own, then come work with me. I would love to help you. And that is my job. I would love to share a few more of these responses because they were just so beautiful. One of the biggest ahas and transformations was, well, she said, wow, there have been so many. I think the biggest aha transformation is really seeing that it is not about me and how I am not responsible for what he did. Isn't that amazing? Because true, even if you start to understand that it's not about you, sometimes we still want to take responsibility, right? And it's not our responsibility. She says, but second to that, also understanding that I am able to change the response. And this is such a beautiful clarification, is that no, we can't change what's happened to us, ladies. We can't change our husbands, much though we try, and we can't change his behavior, but we can change how we respond. We can change how we react. We can take control of what is in our control, and we can let go of what isn't. And it's so powerful. So I asked all of you guys all of those things, and those were the themes that came up. And then I also asked my clients to share kind of their big transformations. And theirs are a little bit different. Theirs came from not just listening to the podcast, but from coaching. So I said, can you share what your biggest transformations and ahas have been from before you started coaching to now? And I want to share a few of these because they were so beautiful and they were a lot more specific. So one of my clients said, I thought I was good at taking care of myself before I started coaching. And I was probably on the right track, which is what helped me find her. But I was pretty apathetic in my marriage and I felt indifferent about mothering. And I think this was I wanted to share this one specifically because I know so many of you feel this way. So many of you do feel apathetic. So many of you feel like, I am tired of giving everything into my marriage. Like, I don't even know that I have anything left to give. I don't even know that I care. And yet, ladies, you do care, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You do care, excuse me, about where you are emotionally and about where your marriage is emotionally. Now, what you do with that, whether you choose to stay or leave or whatever, is entirely up to you. But if you're feeling apathetic, you are definitely within good company, because I know so many of you struggle with this. And again, inside my program, one of the things that I love is that I'm able to coach not just on your marriage, but about everything that comes up for you. And yes, that includes motherhood, it includes weight loss, it includes your boss, it includes your job, it includes whatever it is that comes up. And so many of you too struggle as moms, feeling frustrated, stressed out, in this case, indifferent, right? So she said, I felt apathetic in my marriage and I felt indifferent about mothering. I have since learned how to put myself first in the best way, in a way that takes the responsibility of my happiness off of anyone else's shoulders and places that power back into my own hands. It doesn't mean I'm alone. I have a better relationship with my husband. I love being a mom again. It has felt so good to love others because I am learning to love myself first. Ladies, what a powerful transformation, and it's completely available to you. If you want to have that kind of transformation, come work with me and I will help you uncover all of those drawers that we don't even realize are there so that you can have a better relationship with your husband, love being a mom again, and love other people and love yourself. It's such a powerful powerful transformation. Another one that I wanted to share is she said, a different client said, I'm still shocked by this, but I am at peace with almost no anxiety. How many of you have anxiety and wish that you didn't? Then you will relate to this, right? I don't panic when I think about my husband's addiction. I focus on my work and I trust him to do his. I'm not willing to lay down my peace for a what if he's lying, because I'll never really know either way, so I might as well be happy. And I want you guys to know how much work is in that statement of I'm never going to really know either way, so I might as well be happy is not a flippant, let me just think my way out of my feelings. This is tough work. We know that it's not a way of thinking out of your feelings because she doesn't have the anxiety that goes with it, right? So she was saying she's at peace with almost no anxiety and she doesn't panic about her husband's addiction. If she were just trying to think her way out of her feelings or try to convince herself out of it, then she would still be feeling anxiety. She has done the work. She has changed her beliefs. She has processed the emotion so that she's at a true place of peace. And if you want to feel that too, it's entirely available to you. Another one of my clients said, I have so much control over my emotions and my reactions now in every part of my life. And that was such a beautiful testament of all of this work can culminate to improve every area of your life. How many of you wish that you had more control over yourself, over your emotions and your reactions? So many of us get stuck feeling like we are at the mercy of our reactions, right? It's like, I can't help it. I just eat the bag of cookies. Right before I know it, I've just gone I feel stressed. I've gone into the kitchen and I've just inhaled a bag of Doritos, right? Or I can't help it. I can hear myself yelling at my kids, but I just can't stop it. Or I can hear myself yelling at my husband and I just can't seem to get a hold of myself ahead of time in order for me not to have that reaction, right? This is a huge win to be able to control your emotions and your reactions, not because your emotions are bad and that we shouldn't feel them, but in fact, the opposite, to understand what they are, to fully have control over how you respond to them and how you react to them is sensational. All right. I want to share one last win to celebrate all of you guys. And I love this one because it was just so powerful. This is from a podcast listener. She said that her biggest transformation is, I've learned that this is not about me, that it's about him. I can't change his behavior no matter how much I want to. I also have learned that this is about his own insecurities and not knowing how to handle them, so he turns to porn for the feel-good solution. He started before we were married. He suffers from guilt and shame, and I'm learning that I have to deal and resolve my own issues to grow and be a better person, which will enable me to be a happier, healthier, and more in control of my life. I'm starting to ask myself, why do you feel that way? Trying to really get to the bottom of the things that I carry. I'm also learning about forgiving. This is a very hard thing to do, and we've had setbacks in this area, but I know that the only way to heal is to be able to forgive completely, not condoning it, but actually forgive to be able to move forward to a healthier, happier marriage. I love this. Yes, forgiveness is the key, and I've been talking about it a lot over the last week. And one of the things that I want to offer for those of you who are struggling to forgive is that forgiveness is freeing yourself from the pain of the past. If you're struggling with that, again, come work with me, because the key to that is learning how to process the pain of the past. That's what forgiveness is, processing all that pain, letting it go. I share more about this. If you guys go listen to, I did a bonus podcast episode. It's in like the first 20 episodes, I think, called My Journey of Forgiveness. Go listen to it, where I talk about what it was like to forgive my husband and what that looked like for me. And I kind of walk you through that journey and experience for me. But that is the key to you moving forward. It's not only forgiving your husband, but also forgiving yourself, which we often don't realize is sneakily under there. We often want to keep ourselves, we want to keep a little bit of blame. We want to keep a little bit of responsibility of, I should have known better, right? I should have seen this coming, or I should have handled that better. And again, ladies, that's just your brain staying stuck in the negative, staying stuck in where you haven't made progress yet. And I want to encourage you ladies today to celebrate yourself. ladies, I don't think you realize how incredible you are. I don't think you realize how very in the top 1% you are. Very few women, very few human beings are focusing on their self-improvement. Very few human beings pick up a podcast every single week and listen to it. Very few human beings are doing the work on themselves to progress and to heal from past trauma. Just take a look around. You'll know that I'm right? I want you guys to take a moment and allow yourselves to be proud of the work that you're doing, because I am so proud of you. I am amazed by each one of you, and I am honored and privileged to work with you every single week. Obviously, I wish it was more, but I want you guys to notice and give yourselves credit for the work that you've done. Celebrate your wins. And if you want a beautiful, powerful, life-changing exercise, then do it every single day. Every single day. At the end of the day, at the start of the day, however you want to do it, take a moment and celebrate your win for that day. Sit down and ask yourself, what's a win for the day? And at first, it's going to be super hard to do. It's going to be super difficult to come up with any type of win that you can celebrate. But the more you do it, the easier it's going to become. The more you see your progress, the more likely you are to keep working and actually get where you want to go. Ladies, I love you. Today is a celebration of you. I'm so grateful for you. I'm honored to be here with you. And I love you so much. I'll see you guys next week on a new episode. So take care. All right, ladies, it's time to rise up and take charge of your healing, and I have the best way for you to do it. I have created a lifetime access coaching program that I have designed specifically for you and exactly what you're going through right now. This is where I help you develop a personal mastery of all the tools that you're learning here on the podcast in order for you to create a permanent change. Go to my website, jolenewind.com. You will find all the information there, and you can sign up today, and we will start going forward. I can't wait to see you there.